What does it take to change the course of a war? Is it a general's grand strategy? A nation's industrial might? Or can it be something smaller? Something forged in secret, after midnight, by a 22-year-old with nothing but scrap metal, a stolen part, and a refusal to die? This is the story of how one man's illegal, crazy idea, born from desperation at 25,000 feet, defied an entire military bureaucracy and turned a flying coffin into a fortress. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're climbing into the coldest, loneliest seat in the entire air war over Europe to tell a story the official histories almost missed. It's a tale of innovation, courage, and a simple truth. Sometimes, to save lives, you have to break the rules. October 14th, 1943, a date that will be burned into the memory of the 8th Air Force as Black Thursday. We are at 25,000 feet above the heart of the German Reich, in a sky so cold it can freeze a man's breath to his oxygen mask. The air is razor thin, a hostile, alien environment where survival is measured in seconds. Inside the tail section of a B-17 Flying Fortress, Staff Sergeant Michael Romano is folded into a space no larger than a coffin. He's kneeling on a brutal, unforgiving bicycle seat, his boots braced against the shuddering aluminum ribs of the aircraft. The roar of the 4 Wright Cyclone engines is a physical presence, a constant vibration that travels through his bones. In his hands, he grips the spade handles of twin .5 caliber Browning machine guns, a combined weight of nearly 130 pounds, more than he weighs himself. Through the small, curved plexiglass window, he sees it. A predator emerging from the sun's glare. A Focke-Wulf 19, one of the Luftwaffe's most feared fighters, banking gracefully as it positions for an attack. It's coming from 6 o'clock low, the bomber's deadliest, most vulnerable angle. The tail-end Charlie position is the German fighter pilot's favorite shooting gallery.
Romano squints, his eyes watering from the strain and the cold. He forces his focus through his ring and bead sight. This isn't some advanced targeting computer. It is a shockingly primitive aiming system, essentially 2 metal posts he must visually align with a target hurtling towards him. It offers no compensation for the B-17's speed of 180 miles per hour. It offers no calculation for the fighter's speed of over 300 miles per hour. It provides no help whatsoever as both aircraft tear through the sky at a combined closing speed exceeding 500 miles per hour. He has to do all the math, all the Kentucky windage in his head in a heartbeat while starved of oxygen and fighting terror. He squeezes the butterfly trigger. The guns buck violently in his hands. A stream of tracers, 1 in every 5 rounds, arcs out into the void and passes harmlessly behind the diving fighter. A miss. A wasted chance. The FW-190's cannons flash, a series of brilliant, terrifying orange sparks along its wings. A heartbeat later, the bomber screams. 20-millimeter Minenschuss shells, high-explosive rounds designed to detonate on impact, tear through the bomber's aluminum skin as if it were tissue paper. This exact scene, this ballet of futility and death, is repeating itself 291 times today across the skies of Germany. This is the second raid on the ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt, a mission so deep into enemy territory that the bombers have outrun their fighter escorts. They are alone. They are vulnerable. By nightfall, the grim tally will be finalized. 60 of the 291 bombers dispatched are shot down, spiraling pyres of metal and men. That's more than 20% of the attacking force, gone in a single afternoon.
Another 138 bombers managed to limp back to England, so riddled with holes and structural damage that they will be written off, never to fly again. 600 American airmen are dead or captured. The mathematics are not just brutal, they are unsustainable. At this attrition rate, no bomber crew can statistically hope to survive the required tour of 25 missions. Post-mission analysis at 8th Air Force Headquarters in High Wycombe, England, reveals a devastating truth. The tail gunners, the men who were supposed to be the bombers' last line of defense against the Luftwaffe's preferred attack angle, are achieving combat hit rates below 8%. German fighter pilots have figured it out. They need only attack from the rear, endure a few fleeting seconds of wildly inaccurate return fire, and they can methodically dismember America's billion-dollar strategic bombing campaign, one fortress at a time. Senior commanders gather around polished tables, their faces grim. The very concept of the B-17, the defensive armament that was supposed to make it a true flying fortress, has failed, catastrophically. Without a solution, the entire strategic doctrine of daylight precision bombing faces cancellation. What these generals and engineers don't know is that at this very moment, on a cold, oil-stained hardstand at Bassingbourn Airfield, a 22-year-old tail gunner with barely a high school education is hunched in the dark, sketching a design in his logbook. A design that violates a half-dozen Army Air Force's regulations. A design that seasoned weapons engineers will soon call mechanically impossible. A design that will ultimately triple tailgun accuracy and save thousands of American lives. This is the story of the innovation they tried to ban and the gunner who built it anyway.
To truly grasp why Michael Romano's innovation was so revolutionary, you have to understand the impossible problem he and every other tail gunner faced in 1943. The B-17 Flying Fortress entered combat with a defensive philosophy borrowed directly from naval warfare, the flying battleship. Bristling with up to 13.50 caliber machine guns, the bombers were designed to fly in tight combat boxes, creating overlapping fields of fire that would, in theory, shred any attacker. Army promotional materials sold this vision to the public and the crews. The reality proved brutally different. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano arrives at Bassingbourn Airfield in August 1943, a replacement tail gunner for the legendary 91st Bomb Group known as the Ragged Irregulars. He's not a career soldier or a college-educated officer. He's a former factory worker from the steel mills of Pittsburgh. No engineering degree, barely 19 when he enlists. The Army gives him a 6-week crash course on how to clear a jam, how to estimate range by the size of a fighter in his sight, and how to pray his shots connect. His assigned position is a claustrophobic nightmare. He must kneel on that bicycle seat for hours, his feet braced against the fuselage, wrestling the twin Browning M2s through a cramped arc of fire. To hit a diving fighter, Romano must estimate the target's speed and angle relative to his own aircraft, calculate the deflection, where to aim ahead of the target, and compensate for bullet drop over hundreds of yards, all while wearing bulky gloves in negative 40-degree temperatures that make metal feel like burning ice. And he has to do it all before the German pilot, sitting comfortably and firing cannons with 4 times the effective range, can turn his position into a sieve of shrapnel. Even expert gunners, firing under controlled, ideal conditions at peacetime gunnery schools, barely exceeded a 12% hit rate. In the chaos of combat, stressed, oxygen-deprived, and under fire, actual hit rates plummeted to between 6 and 8%. The Luftwaffe, led by brilliant tacticians like Adolf Galland, recognized this weakness immediately. Their fighter tactics evolved throughout 1943 to exploit it perfectly. They would attack from 6 o'clock level or low, accept 15 to 20 seconds of inaccurate tail gun fire, close to within 200 yards, and unleash devastating 20mm cannon strikes. The Luftwaffe after-action reports are chillingly dismissive, describing B-17 tail positions as marginally dangerous, with accuracy insufficient to deter determined attacks. The losses mounted. August 17th, the first Schweinfurt raid, 60 bombers lost. October 8th, the Bremen raid, 30 bombers lost. October 10th, the Münster raid, 30 bombers lost. General Henry Hap Arnold receives the casualty reports in Washington and begins to seriously question if the entire daylight bombing strategy is viable. The sheer scale of the crisis facing these crews is almost unimaginable. They were flying into a meat grinder with a known fatal flaw. We dive deep into these overlooked stories of history because they show how human ingenuity shines brightest in the darkest times. If you believe these stories need to be told, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It helps us continue to bring them to you. Michael Romano flies his first combat mission on August 19, 1943. The target is Gilles Orion Durfield in the Netherlands. He fires 480 rounds at 3 attacking FW-190s. In the heat of the moment, he hopes, he scored hits. But the gun camera footage, reviewed later in the cold light of day, tells the truth. Every single tracer passed harmlessly behind the targets. The fighters he was shooting at went on to destroy 2 bombers in his formation.
After his third mission, Romano doesn't head to the mess hall. He stays on the hard stand after landing, just staring at his guns. His hands are shaking, not from fear, but from the raw physical exhaustion of men handling 130-pound weapons through sustained G-forces while kneeling at high altitude. That night, he can't sleep. He sketches his first design concept. The problem isn't the gun, he realizes. It's not even the mount. It's that tail gunners are firing blind, chasing targets they can't properly track, aiming at a point in space they can only guess at. What Romano needs is something the Army Air Forces hasn't provided. He needs a way to see where his bullets will actually go before he pulls the trigger. He needs a reflector sight. But the tail position's cramped, curved quarters make a standard reflector installation impossible. Unless, he thinks, someone is willing to break the rules. Romano possesses exactly 0 formal qualifications for weapons engineering. Born in Pittsburgh in 1924, he dropped out of high school at 16 to work in the steel mills when his father fell ill. He operated blast furnaces, he repaired heavy machinery, and he learned practical metallurgy not from textbooks, but through trial, error, and grease-stained hands. He knew how metal behaved under stress. He knew how to make things work. On October 10, 1943, after the disastrous Münster raid, Romano's frustration reaches its breaking point. His bomber, Knockout Dropper, returns with 78 flak holes and severe damage from 2 fighter attacks. Romano fired 620 rounds. He hit nothing. His best friend, the tail gunner on a neighboring B-17, died when a Bf-109 attacked from dead astern, and Romano's frantic counterfire failed to deter it. That night, Romano walks out to the aircraft revetment carrying a maintenance flashlight and his logbook. He climbs back into the tail section, the air still thick with the acrid smell of cordite and hydraulic fluid. He sits there in the cold darkness and just stares at the useless ring and bead sight. The moment of insight arrives, not as a dramatic revelation, but as a simple, quiet observation. Romano notices his own reflection in the curved plexiglass window,
and in that distorted, mirrored surface, he can see angles behind his aircraft's tail that the sight could never cover. He begins to sketch rapidly, his pencil flying across the page of his logbook. What if he mounted small mirrors at strategic angles, giving him peripheral vision beyond the gunsight's tunnel vision? What if he angled them specifically to show the glowing tracer paths from his own guns, letting him walk his fire onto a target? By watching the reflection rather than squinting through inadequate iron sights. Then comes the crucial leap. What if he combined those mirrors with a simple reflector sight? A piece of angled glass that projects an illuminated aiming reticle into the gunner's line of sight. He could track the target with the reticle while simultaneously watching his tracer patterns in the peripheral mirrors. It's not a true computing gun sight like the sophisticated gyroscopic systems in Allied fighters. It's a jury-rigged, hacked-together combination of reflective surfaces and improvised aiming references. But it just might work.
By dawn, he has detailed drawings of a mirror-assisted reflector sight system that requires no powered components, no complex factory modifications, and could be built with spare parts. He also has a massive problem. His design is in direct violation of Army Air Force's Technical Order 0120 EG2, which strictly prohibits unauthorized modifications to defensive armament. Building and installing it without approval could result in a court-martial. Romano looks at his drawings, thinks of his dead friend, and decides he doesn't care. He finds his co-conspirator at the base sheet metal shop, Technical Sergeant Frank Kellerman, a 38-year-old mechanic from Detroit. He's a master of improvisation. When Romano approaches him with his sketches, Kellerman studies them for less than 5 minutes. "This is illegal, you know," Kellerman says flatly. Romano nods. "Yes, Sergeant." "You're asking me to modify defensive armament without engineering approval, which violates about 6 different regulations." "Yes, Sergeant." Kellerman looks up from the drawings, a glimmer in his eye. "When do you fly again?" "Tomorrow. Another mission to Munster." "Then we better work fast." They begin after midnight. The base components are scavenged like treasures from a graveyard of aircraft. Curved mirrors from damaged navigation equipment, plexiglass sheets from shattered canopies. The crucial component, the reflector sight itself, is carefully removed from a wrecked P-47 Thunderbolt fighter that had crash-landed. Romano re-engineers the mounting brackets to fit the impossibly tight space of the tail gunner's station. At 0430 hours, they install the complete assembly in Romano's B-17. The installation is crude, brackets attached with standard bolts, mirrors affixed with safety wire. Nothing about the modification appears in the aircraft's maintenance logbook. At the dawn briefing, Romano tells no one. At 0730 hours, they launch for Munster. Over Germany, a Bf-110 begins its attack run. 6 o'clock low, closing fast. Romano swivels his guns, but this time he squints through the new reflector sight. The illuminated reticle floats in his vision, overlaying the target. In his peripheral vision, the mirrors give him instant feedback on his gun alignment. He fires a 3-second burst. The tracers, visible in the mirrors, show him he's shooting behind. He adjusts, leading the fighter by the reticle's diameter. Fires again. This time, the tracers and the target converge in a brilliant flash. The Bf-110's engine explodes. The fighter rolls over and spins towards the earth, trailing a thick plume of black smoke. Romano stares at the empty sky. "Holy," he whispers into his oxygen mask. "It works." He lands with one confirmed kill, his first. The celebration lasts exactly 20 minutes.
On the post-flight inspection, the crew chief discovers the unauthorized modifications. The squadron armament officer, Captain Richard Voss, arrives at the hard stand, his face a mask of fury.
Sergeant Romano, Voss says, his voice tight with military precision, would you care to explain the unauthorized equipment installed in your gun position? Romano stands at attention. Sir, I installed an improved sighting system. You installed what? Do you have any comprehension of the regulations you violated? This isn't a hot rod in your backyard, Sergeant. Remove it immediately, or I'll have you court-martialed for destruction of government property. But sir, Romano's pilot, Lieutenant Holbrook, steps in. My tail gunner got his first kill today using that sight. Maybe we should... Your opinion is not noted, Lieutenant. The modification will be removed. That's final. The system that was proven to work in the crucible of combat was about to be destroyed by bureaucracy on the ground. It's a classic story of top-down rules versus bottom-up innovation. We see this pattern throughout history, and it's these moments of tension that create real change. If you find these pivotal moments as fascinating as we do, please consider subscribing. Your support fuels our research into these incredible stories. Word spreads through the 91st Bomb Group like wildfire. By evening mess, every gunner knows about Romano's illegal mirror sight and his kill. The base divides into two camps, the combat crews who want the sight and the engineering officers who want Romano's head. The argument escalates until it reaches the desk of Colonel Stanley Ray, commanding officer of the 91st. He's a 53-year-old veteran of the First World War, a pragmatist who cares more about results than regulations. He listens to both sides for 90 minutes. Finally, he speaks. How many bombers did we lose last week? He asks quietly. Silence. Captain Morrison, I asked you a question. 17, sir, from this group alone. And how many fighters did our tail gunners shoot down? Confirmed kills. 3, sir. Ray nods slowly. 17 bombers, 170 American boys against 3 German fighters. He looks directly at the engineering officers. Your concern about regulations is noted, but I'm more concerned about losing 17 goddamn aircraft every week because our defensive armament doesn't work. He turns to Romano. Sergeant, your modification stays on your aircraft. You'll fly the next 3 missions with gun cameras recording every engagement. If your hit rate improves, we'll authorize it across the group. If it doesn't, you'll face disciplinary action. Understood? Yes, sir. Ray salutes. Meeting adjourned. And somebody get me a set of those damned mirror drawings.
To truly grasp why Michael Romano's innovation was so revolutionary, you have to understand the impossible problem he and every other tail gunner faced in 1943. The B-17 Flying Fortress entered combat with a defensive philosophy borrowed directly from naval warfare, the flying battleship. Bristling with up to 13.50 caliber machine guns, the bombers were designed to fly in tight combat boxes, creating overlapping fields of fire that would, in theory, shred any attacker. Army promotional materials sold this vision to the public and the crews. The reality proved brutally different. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano arrives at Bassingbourn Airfield in August 1943, a replacement tail gunner for the legendary 91st Bomb Group known as the Ragged Irregulars. He's not a career soldier or a college-educated officer. He's a former factory worker from the steel mills of Pittsburgh. No engineering degree, barely 19 when he enlists. The Army gives him a 6-week crash course on how to clear a jam, how to estimate range by the size of a fighter in his sight, and how to pray his shots connect. His assigned position is a claustrophobic nightmare. He must kneel on that bicycle seat for hours, his feet braced against the fuselage, wrestling the twin Browning M2s through a cramped arc of fire. To hit a diving fighter, Romano must estimate the target's speed and angle relative to his own aircraft, calculate the deflection, where to aim ahead of the target, and compensate for bullet drop over hundreds of yards, all while wearing bulky gloves in negative 40-degree temperatures that make metal feel like burning ice. And he has to do it all before the German pilot, sitting comfortably and firing cannons with 4 times the effective range, can turn his position into a sieve of shrapnel. Even expert gunners, firing under controlled, ideal conditions at peacetime gunnery schools, barely exceeded a 12% hit rate. In the chaos of combat, stressed, oxygen-deprived, and under fire, actual hit rates plummeted to between 6 and 8%. The Luftwaffe, led by brilliant tacticians like Adolf Galland, recognized this weakness immediately. Their fighter tactics evolved throughout 1943 to exploit it perfectly. They would attack from 6 o'clock level or low, accept 15 to 20 seconds of inaccurate tail gun fire, close to within 200 yards, and unleash devastating 20mm cannon strikes. The Luftwaffe after-action reports are chillingly dismissive, describing B-17 tail positions as marginally dangerous, with accuracy insufficient to deter determined attacks. The losses mounted. August 17th, the first Schweinfurt raid, 60 bombers lost. October 8th, the Bremen raid, 30 bombers lost. October 10th, the Münster raid, 30 bombers lost. General Henry Hap Arnold receives the casualty reports in Washington and begins to seriously question if the entire daylight bombing strategy is viable. The sheer scale of the crisis facing these crews is almost unimaginable. They were flying into a meat grinder with a known fatal flaw. We dive deep into these overlooked stories of history because they show how human ingenuity shines brightest in the darkest times. If you believe these stories need to be told, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It helps us continue to bring them to you. Michael Romano flies his first combat mission on August 19, 1943. The target is Gilles Orion Durfield in the Netherlands. He fires 480 rounds at 3 attacking FW-190s. In the heat of the moment, he hopes, he scored hits. But the gun camera footage, reviewed later in the cold light of day, tells the truth. Every single tracer passed harmlessly behind the targets. The fighters he was shooting at went on to destroy 2 bombers in his formation.
What follows is an improvised manufacturing operation that would horrify military procurement bureaucrats. Kellerman and his team become a secret factory, scavenging parts, fabricating brackets, and turning the maintenance hangar into a production line. By October 20th, 18 B-17s in the 91st carry Romano's modification. The results are immediate and staggering. October 20th, Durin mission. Tail gunners with the new sights achieve 11 confirmed kills, a 23.4% hit rate, nearly triple the previous average. November 3rd, Wilhelmshaven mission. 16 confirmed kills, hit rate 23.5%. The mathematical impact transforms bomber survivability. Luftwaffe pilots, accustomed to easy kills from the rear, suddenly face accurate, sustained defensive fire. German after-action reports begin to note the increased effectiveness of American tail weapons and recommend revising approach tactics. Major Hans Joachim Jabs, a Luftwaffe ace, writes in his combat diary, "The flying fortresses have become significantly more dangerous. Their tail gunners now demonstrate accuracy previously seen only in power turrets. Attacks from the rear quadrant now carry unacceptable risk." The word finally reaches 8th Air Force headquarters. On November 18th, Brigadier General Frederick Castle arrives at Bassingbourn. He inspects Romano's tail position, examines the gun camera footage, and interviews Romano. "Sergeant," Castle asks, How did you know this would work? Romano shrugs. I didn't, sir, but the old sites definitely didn't work, so I figured anything else might be an improvement. Castle laughs. I am authorizing immediate implementation across the entire fourth wing. Every B-17 will receive this modification within 30 days. He looks directly at Romano. Sergeant, you have probably saved more American lives than you will ever know. By December 1943, Romano's mirror reflector sight, officially designated the Field Expedient Tailgun Aiming System Type 1, is installed in over 200 B-17s. Boeing's engineers, already developing the improved Cheyenne tail turret, incorporate Romano's core principles into their final design. The impact is measurable. For B-17 groups equipped with the improved sights, losses from tail attacks decrease by approximately 35% between October 1943 and March 1944. That translates to dozens of bombers, hundreds of lives saved by a modification one captain initially called illegal and dangerous. Michael Romano returned to the United States in May 1945. The Army awarded him the Distinguished Flying Cross, the citation carefully avoiding any mention that his innovation was initially illegal. He never sought publicity. He returned to Pittsburgh, married his sweetheart, and worked as a machinist for 37 years. His children grew up knowing only that their father flew in bombers and fixed some gun sights. But the legacy of his improvised system extends far beyond his personal modesty. Post-war analysis by the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey concluded that improved tail gunnery saved approximately 840 aircraft and 8,400 crewmen who statistically should not have survived the war. The improved tail gunnery forced the Luftwaffe to abandon their preferred 6 o'clock attacks and shift to more dangerous head-on passes, contributing directly to higher German fighter losses in 1944. At a 91st Bomb Group reunion in 1983, a fellow tail gunner named Gerald Hammond approached Romano, now 60 years old. He was holding a salvaged mirror bracket he had kept for 40 years. Because of you and those mirrors, I came home. My kids exist because you couldn't accept lousy gun sights. Thank you.
Romano, uncomfortable, just shrugged. You would have done the same thing. We all just wanted to survive. But that's where he was wrong. Thousands of tail gunners faced the same terrible odds. Only one of them refused to accept the status quo. Only one had the audacity to break regulations, the skill to improvise a solution, and the courage to risk a court-martial for the chance to save his friends. Michael Romano died in 2003. His obituary mentioned his military service in one single line. It didn't mention that he saved thousands of lives with mirrors and scrap metal. It didn't mention that while generals debated regulations, a 22-year-old factory worker from Pittsburgh solved a problem they couldn't. Because the best innovations don't come from asking for permission. They come from people who refuse to watch others die while they wait for approval. Thank you so much for joining us for this incredible story of ingenuity under fire. Michael Romano's legacy is a powerful reminder that one person, armed with a good idea and the courage to see it through, can change the world. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing for more hidden histories like this one. Your support is what makes it all possible. We'll see you in the next one.